So I can't be my best if I can't fail. The only way to be better is to fail and learn and get better.
Hey, it's Nikki, Lewallen, Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it. Hey, it's Nikki, and I am ready to dive into some true science today, learning from my friend Edie how to truly measure and capture data that moves people forward. That's a tough nut to crack, but when we have solid data, we can really make meaningful change. And I'm all about learning anything I can to do that. Edie Geller is a visionary leader and an entrepreneur with over 25 years experience under his belt. Edie has a passion for technology and meaningful work. So you're seeing why he's a perfect guest here already, right? With his Australian roots now firmly planted in the bustling cityscape of New York, he is now focusing on his newest venture called SKOR. That's SKOR, an innovative data company dedicated to measuring corporate culture. The first time I spoke with Edie, I could tell his approach was unique and I love data. So I was like, oh, tell me more. You know, data, it tells a story and it helps people improve, especially when data helps our lives at work become more meaningful. I am so passionate about that, and so is he. So I've fell in love with this tool, and Gut Plus Science is now launching into a partnership with SKOR. The platform is incredible. I'm so excited to share it with you all. Today's episode is really going to focus on helping us understand a way to really measure culture. I think everyone is interested in that. So I brought Edie on for this introduction to our partnership to really lay the land behind the methodology of SKOR, how it's different. And I thought it would be perfect if Edie could kick off with the origin story of SKOR. He's at many companies. He could be doing anything with his life right now. And there is a gap that SKOR is here to fill. And I want to hear the why behind the organization. So Edie, welcome to Gut Plus Science.
Amazing. Nikki, thank you so much for having me on the show. What an incredible introduction. I'm super excited to be here with you. So I guess a quick why SKOR in the background. I'll try and be quick, but just the high level of it is I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always founded, grown, and exited companies. And my first company was a technology consulting company. My last one was a consumer tech company. Then when I exited that about 18 months ago, I was trying to reflect about what that journey was like and what I should be doing next. And really upon my journey of building those companies, I realized I wasn't building companies. I was actually building teams. I was really focused on the people, their development, their growth, their success through servant leadership, understanding what was the environment in which they worked. My job was to coach and develop them. And really, I felt that I built teams, high-performing teams, and the outcome was a great company and a great result. But my focus was teams and people. And I reflected upon that. That's what I love to do. And I love developing people, coaching and nurturing them and really learning from them. Frankly, I learn a hell of a lot from the people around me. I'm just like I coach them too. And then I guess about, 18 months ago, I started to think about what's next. I thought, well, what do I love doing? And I spoke to dozens and dozens of CEOs about this area of teams and culture and performance. And I realized most CEOs don't think like I do. They don't think about they're building teams and people and cultures. They think they're building companies and people are just some of the things in it. And I had one CEO said to me, we did culture last year, Eddie. Culture's not even a priority this year. And it really got me thinking how can culture and people not be the number one priority for every single CEO to build an incredible company? And there's got to be something wrong. And I thought, well, the only way I can fix that and solve it is being the stubborn entrepreneur, let's try and do it, was to measure it. Because if you don't measure it, you can't convince anyone, frankly, to make change and rethinking. So therein lies the sort of the genesis of starting SKOR, and the reason why it's called SKOR, which probably maybe is obvious, but I want every company to have a score. And I want it to be part of the vernacular. And every company has a score that measures their culture. And it then gets to obviously evaluate where they're at and why they should be different. So that's the backstory quickly.
And Edie, I don't know if you know this about my background that really created this podcast, Gut Plus Science, but I was working alongside an employee engagement software company where we were running surveys and providing data insights on employee engagement gaps and opportunities. And, the profound feedback that we had from, I can't remember one client that didn't say this, was, if I didn't have this data, this burst, understanding of revealing this true feedback, we would have never made this most important change that is so needed. Because across the company, we were assuming, we just thought, we had a gut feeling, like going back to gut plus science, you do have to lean into some of that gut and intuition and all of that, but like the profound importance of data to truly understand. And I think there's so many companies out there and leaders out there that still rely on gut and what 5 people said versus the hundreds of what they said. And so every single one would come back and say, if we didn't do this, we would never know. And so measuring is so important. And before we get into the nitty gritty of SKOR and just the profound difference of the methodology and all that, our friends at CultureCon spotlighted you in a recent article that I thought was so cool, comparing it to a sports analogy, like what you do at SKOR. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of think that employee surveys, ENPS, and really the way employee engagement is measured today is kind of like sports, like game day. And the feedback you're getting from employees and from your team is kind of like a losing day, frankly. They're sort of picking on things that are kind of in their headspace from yesterday or from this morning or from last week. And kind of like it becomes a bit of a complaining fest and like, well, what people are going to do with this data, like how will they use it? And it's kind of like an in the moment sense of, I guess, reality. And I've been doing engagement surveys my whole life in other businesses, so I sort of get it. And, the challenge with, looking at the data that way is that you tend to look at symptoms. You don't really, it's very hard to get to root cause. Whereas if you go back to, the inputs to the losing day, so go back to sports, so why did we lose? But go back to what the inputs were, like what was the setup of it? Like how did we prepare? What was our diet? What was our sleep like? What was our exercise like? What was our mental state like? What was our speed like at different situations? What were our plays like at different situations? They're the inputs to it. And if they're then, I guess, assessed to be not great, that's how we move the needle on game day. So for me, it's like, the game day sort of, Moneyball's a great example. People know the Moneyball story. I'm trying to almost, if you wanted to think about SKOR high level, applying Moneyball to corporate workplaces. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
That's so good. And as many leaders are in in-depth planning mode for the new year right now, we think about all of the time and energy we spend on these plans for our business and what we're going to do next year, the next 3 years. And how many times do we rerun an entire year or 3 years with the wrong priorities? And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, wait, if we just had the insights of the data so that could lead the strategy, so we're actually doing the things that matter and we're not constantly chasing like this hamster wheel. It's like data is the lighthouse.
Totally.
Let's go into the nitty gritty here. Summarize like the core components or the approach that makes the SKOR way work, how it's different, all of this.
Totally. Absolutely. So first of all, it's come from extensive science and research of already, thousands of successful companies that have built fantastic financially driven companies with fantastic cultures. And on top of that, through lots of assessments, through lots of research, it's my own learning of building companies and building teams, etc. So really, SKOR is made up of a formula of 3 ingredients. We call it the 3 C's: cohesion, clarity, and courage. Cohesion is basically focused on their core behaviors, how people are connected to their core values, the company's mission, and our shared beliefs together. How are we able to be wired together to work together and connect with one another? The second C is clarity. How clear are people around the strategy of the organization, the team goals, the company goals? What's my role leading up to the team and company goals? Another way to say it is, which mountain are we climbing? How fast are we climbing it? What's my role in climbing it to make sure that we're all working together? And the third C is courage. Basically, how is the environment set up for people to do their best work? Is there a growth mindset? If I try and fail, am I reprimanded or am I encouraged to try again? Is there transparency when it comes to performance? Is there a leadership that's authentic? Are rewards objective? So that's how we sort of assess on these 3 layers. And then you get a score out of 100. The score is 30, 30, 40. And through that lens, you can understand where you're at connected wise. So in all of our research and all the science, and basically you said that these 3 levels and layers of evaluation can provide a really comprehensive view of, to your point before, of getting to really root cause analysis of where things are at. Like a great example we've often seen is like employee surveys. One of the things, the top 3 will always come out of a survey result, like we need better communications, we need better comms. So if employee surveys say we need better communications, well, like what happens? We have more town hall questions. We have a weekly blog from the CEO. We think we need better comms. But actually, the root cause is, I don't know what's expected of me. I don't know what my KPIs are, and I know what my team goals are. But it's masked in communication. So here you are focused now on the wrong things, whereas if we just got our metrics and accountability clear, we'd be focused on the right things. And that's what some of those inputs really work around.
It's so good. And going back to my, planning for the new year and these long-term strategies, how many times are we looking at the outcomes that have manifested, right? Gosh, the vibe around here is off lately. So we're going to, add more pizza parties and fun, interactive, team gatherings on Slack. But really the root cause is like an individual doesn't feel connected to the mission. None of that stuff is going to work. And so, gosh, I have lived that out. I have lived in those environments, and I know how important it is to really get to those core areas. And I love that you break it down into those 3 C's. We'll have that in the notes for people: cohesion, clarity, courage. You talked about on a scale of 1 to 100, bring this to life as to how individuals leverage SKOR and leaders leverage SKOR, and how often and how long does this take? Kind of give us that use case.
Sure, absolutely. So it's basically a couple of principles that are worthwhile explaining, to your point, Nikki, that are unique to SKOR, that are unlike other platforms. Firstly, it's only invited to be completed through people leadership. Only people leaders do the assessment. Managers of people do the assessment only. So supervisors, department heads, division heads, CEOs, leadership team, because managers set culture. Individual contributors live in it. I'm a big believer of people joining companies, they leave managers. Managers are the key across the organization to drive, coach, and develop people and thrive, and obviously in their environment. So it's people leader based. Number 2, all our questions are leading indicator questions, all inputs to culture. So we assess based on everything in terms of the setup of the environment, I guess, across those 3 C's. And every question on the 3rd principle is data driven, meaning every question is an objective question with a rating out of 10. There's no subjectivity. We're not asking for comments and feedback, no emotion. It's black and white, objective based questions. So through that lens, we can get a really good understanding of the data. And of course, there is some subjectivity of like why someone would score a 6 rather than a 7 or a 4 rather than a 5. Of course, there's some of that, but that's always to do that with people and humans. We're not perfect, right? But if you aggregate up the people leadership side and across it all within teams and locations, you're getting a pretty good sense of largely what would be reality. So people leaders take it. It's 50 questions only, takes 10 to 12 minutes to do. And then from that, we can come up with some really profound insights, which I can talk about shortly if you like, but it's really around what the output of that is, which then leads to the recommendations, the data, the science, and clearly the business case for culture. But that's sort of a really key point. And one thing I just want to highlight in case people think, well, hold on a second, if this is asking people leaders for the assessment, what happens if individual contributors are saying something else? Like what happens if managers are drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and they actually don't know what's happening in reality? So as part of the platform, we also ask for the 2 most recent employee survey results. So then we can correlate what employees and individual contributors are telling us versus managers are telling us, and identify if there's any disparity or gaps there that needs to be clear. That'll also be part of the report.
And can you give us a couple of examples of the questions that are leading indicator questions, just so we can see those?
Yeah, absolutely. So an often question that's asked is around like, let's reverse it. At work, do I have the opportunity to do my best work every day? Is an often question, like a Gallup question you'll see in a survey result, employee survey, right? So that's the output. What we would ask as an input or as a leading question would be, how open is the organization that encourage people to take risks, offering creative solutions and learning from failures? And you rate that out of 10. 10 is I'm always invited to take risks and learn from failures. 0 is frankly never. I'm never invited to take risks and learning for failures. And sometimes that could be a 3, 4, or 5. So science says that if I'm not safe to do my best work, I won't want to try and I won't want to fail. So I can't be my best if I can't fail. You can't be your best if you there's no such thing as perfection. The only way to be better is to fail and learn and get better. So if you don't have an environment in which the manager, and it's the manager, not the culture. I mean, you could have cool values of like innovation. That manager does not encourage that person, that team to be creative and have a growth mindset. They're not going to be their best, and they'll be actually, frankly, scared to make a wrong mistake or a bad mistake and then be able to be affected and penalized accordingly. So that's some of the ways in which we connect what typically a lagging indicator question maybe in employee surveys are and what leading indicator question that we have in our platform.
It's so good. And it goes back to like what we can control, right? These are controllable things that we can take action on to make change. Love that. So Edie, talk about the frequency or the cadence of this. And then what does that best practice look like from measurement to measurement?
Yeah, great question. And sorry, you did ask me that earlier. So the whole aspect of SKOR is a score that the organization and frankly, we cascade across the team gets when they do the assessment. But to your point, it's a score, which means you want to improve it and invest in it and get better. So typically we've seen companies do it 2 to 3 times a year, because you're doing it once, then you're doing a bunch of work to get improved across the organization, maybe do it again middle of the year, then again end of the year. We have seen some instances where companies want to do it quarterly, but I don't think it's right to do company-wide quarterly. Maybe it's team or department quarterly if you're going through a lot of change. So there's definitely different use cases, but on average, it's 2 to 3 times a year. You're getting a full report, and every time you get an updated score, a set of actionable recommended projects, and then an updated business case each time. So you're seeing where your baseline was, you're seeing where the updated was, and obviously that's a journey over time. We want all companies to have scores that are ahead of the benchmark, because we benchmark as well, and that's part of the value prop, which we can get to shortly. We want companies to be ahead of it and be a talent magnet where people want to work for them because they have an incredible culture that's transparent and publicly available, that's measured.
That's so good. Can you share with us, I remember from a past conversation, you talked about the importance of partnerships to SKOR. And I'm curious where that comes in with between the 2 to 3 times they're taking it a year and the priorities that SKOR breaks down, and then the action plan and the taking action. Is that part of the platform? That's part of partnerships? Like, what is that gap period of here's the priorities and here's the plan to do the things before we measure again?
Sure, great question. So the whole objective of SKOR, the whole vision behind this platform, this company that I'm building, is about this independent measurement tool, meaning we don't do the services, we're not the consultants, we're not the coaches, we're just the independent measurement tool. Meaning we want to work with coaches, consulting companies, or HR consulting companies where they do the services, where they'll take our recommendations and then implement a bunch of improvements, but we'll be the independent measure for it. So my vision is that all of the demand and all the growth happens through consulting companies because they're working with these clients all the time. And I'm focused at the moment of engaging with HR consultant companies who want to be able to use this as an independent measure and partner with us. Because again, one of the challenges in this whole ecosystem is that there's no independent measure, meaning you could be working with a client for years and then someone says to you, well, have you measured your success? And it's like, well, the company's grown or the revenue's grown. But what happens if the revenue's gone backwards and you spend all this time and money? You really have no independent measure. So for us, it's about this partnership, to your point, of companies to use this as this independent measure where they do the services, and then we'll be the company that comes in and does the independent measurement tool to see how they go. And like ideally, consulting companies start with a company that has a score of 35 and they've done such a great job. They get them to 78, that's ahead of the benchmark.
Well, and from my experience in the past, you can be the greatest gift to a consulting firm for them to be able to do the work they love to do without the gotta go find the problems of what we're going to solve. That's what SKOR does, is identifies those problem areas, the priority areas, so that HR consultants, leadership development consultants, anyone that's a coach can take this data and do their very best work. I think that's so beautiful. I'm glad we're pointing that out. So I know there are a number of coaches and trainers and things that listen to Gut Plus Science. I highly recommend, taking a look at SKOR from a tool in your toolbox perspective as well. Speaking of tools and toolboxes, so, many companies, many leaders have a favorite platform, like assessment tool, call it DISC or predictive index or whatever. There's just, most of us lean towards, ooh, we love that one. I think SKOR is a great complement and works very well with others. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, Nikki, there's lots of great people-based assessment tools, be it culture index, predictive index, DISC, and lots of other assessment platforms. And typically they work pretty well for teams, leadership teams. Someone's joining, they want to make sure that they're a fit and assess them that way. What's interesting about that is that you can assess the team effectively really well, but it's still the environment that is kind of a key part of the equation. So SKOR measures the environment in which those people work. And the environment is really what can then provide those insights to those people to even be more successful. So that's why, to your point, we're totally a complement to any assessment platform because we're kind of assessing the environment, not the people. And the assessment platforms already do the people, and we want to complement and partner with those companies. So we're all about the environment. And again, lots of case studies about this, that you can have an amazing team, but that environment's not set up accordingly, that won't work well. And not just the team, because often companies invest on the leadership teams for culture index, predictive index, and those brands. How about the next level? What happens to the department heads, the middle managers, the supervisors? Where are they at? Like, what, they get ignored? And a lot of companies can't afford to do PI and CI across all managers, although it would be great if they could. Whereas, again, SKOR picks up all managers, the entire environment, and be able to allow for that understanding of where should we make those investments. So we're entirely complementary to those tool sets.
And, maybe thinking about, let's put innovation at the forefront. There may be some things that aren't necessarily a favorite, like DISC and PI or whatever, that, those are here to stay. You love those. You just want to find new ways to sharpen them. There might be a employee engagement survey that you've been running for the past 25 years, right? That hasn't shifted much. It's a one time per year thing. Don't do that. And then, EMPS and, the opportunity gaps there. Can you just talk a little bit more about some of those maybe outdated or better ways, to use SKOR to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to your point, there's definitely lots of employee survey platforms, lots of tools, lot of approaches. Having said that, I keep on learning every day. Have few companies do employee surveys, Nikki. I can't believe it. I thought it was standard that most companies do employee surveys. A lot don't. We just won a client a few months ago and they said, we don't have an employee survey, Eddie. So how do we kick this off? We said, you know what? Let's run a quick one and get going with once we have some data. Is it perfect? No, but it's a baseline, yes. And we kicked off, just a very simple employee survey. We used, I think SurveyMonkey they used to get going. And then with that insight, with those results, then we're going to look to do we've actually kicked off on the SKOR platform in their organization to roll it out there. And then we'll obviously connect those dots. So I definitely think employee surveys are useful. I think well-designed should be better than most, and less questions better. But it's so interesting, right? Because it's such a conflicting dynamic. The leaders want to invite everyone to fill obviously the employee survey with some broad understanding of who they are, but not specifically because they want it to be confidential. If it's truly confidential, you don't know who they are, then you can't really take action, because it's like, well, how do we fix the areas when we don't even know what these areas relate to? And the individual wants you to know who they are, but really not at all, because they want to be truly confidential. And because if they're scared to say something, it might be, misinterpreted and obviously used in their way against them. But you're not sure whether or not to be honest or not, and to be true. So there's so much difficulty with actually getting the correct information from surveys. That's often a challenge too. Just the correctness is also a challenge. Then you're jumping to, again, guesswork and sentiment and understanding. So I think it's flawed. I think there has to be a better way in employee surveys, although something is better than nothing. But that's why we're trying to sort of solve it using the inputs, using SKOR.
Yeah. And that's where I can see, you mentioned a couple of things along the way here. having data from employee insights around, some kind of a survey that is getting employee feedback to compare to the SKOR data to find some trends. Love that. But I think even more powerful when those root cause questions for the leaders empower them to have regular, meaningful conversations with the person, so the issues, right? Like you have a deep relationship and there's trust there, so they're helping you understand the gaps, and you're getting this one off. And gone are the days that we get a 1 day out of 365 snapshot about how things are. It's like, were they having a bad day that day or a good day? You don't know what tomorrow is, right? Like, so it's this very high frequency, really driven by the leader thing that I think is really powerful. Also, love that component that you said to have employee data that compares to SKOR. I love that piece as well, but really leading with, that leader being empowered to have the relationship and be that great leader to the person. Yes, it's really, really powerful stuff. Okay, I know you're passionate about HR, the area of HR in a business, and really helping that to elevate, those HR leaders having a seat at the executive table, being able to be seen as a profit center, not a cost center. So talk about that and really the ROI from your methodology and metrics and SKOR.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk ad nauseum about this, Nikki. So I'm a big proponent of HR being a strategic, leader in the organization. Too many leaders think of HR as sort of a necessary part, like compliance, benefits, employee manual, like the risk side of people, the sort of the negative connotations of people. And of course, you need some of that. No one's disputing that does need to be ticked off, but HR is an enabler. HR, like imagine getting 20% more productivity from all your people and HR leading the way. Imagine if HR can figure out how to recognize more of the people and invest in the managers, coach their leaders. Like, it's an enabler of growth. It's a profit center, frankly, not a cost center. I know the old adage, well, they don't generate revenue, they're not a profit center. BS, that they focus on their people. Their people is the muscle to grow the organization. They're all focused on profit centers. So I think HR is a key thing. And as people get promoted to be a manager and then they all of a sudden they're a manager. But like we just talked about leadership, there's so much muscle they need to develop to be a profound leader. And, HR is an enabler of that. HR can really enable all those things. So there's a huge focus on me to make HRs kind of the heroes in organizations and try and change it also from HR reporting to the CFO, which is another negative move because it's only a finance-driven exercise that's usually cost-related, not a growth-driven exercise, which is strategic, where HR should be around the table rather than at the same level as CFO, not under the CFO, is also something that I'm very gung-ho on. So, and I think, again, part of our platform delivers a business case to HR that they can show to the CEO and CFO going, look how much profit we could grow if we invested in our people this way. And that's what I want to solve and help them enable to be the heroes and not the unsung ones, but the sung ones.
Yes. I often say this statement around, are we checking the box or are we making impact? And I think the new way of HR is a lot of the past was checking the box. This is what we have to have, compliance, whatever. And it's like, but do we really? Are a lot of those things really what we need? What do we really need? And truly moving towards this impact state. And I know that's like the mindset you have and what you were sharing. And then I'll tell you this model that my team and I were looking at, a couple of us were looking at yesterday. You like see these business models sometimes and you hear this person's story and you're like, oh, total dream scenario. But from what I remember, it was $240 of revenue per employee at an agency model like my company. And here's how to do it. There's like this framework. And I'm like, wouldn't that be nice? Now, if you take that and you say, hey, the HR function is to identify and hire and onboard the right people, right? To be able to get us to this strategic model, it's like, that's called profit center, right? And so finding those right people, it's how do we think about this in a way that is high impact? And just story from yesterday, like connected the dots. And I'm like, that is a high functioning HR partner to the business.
Totally. One other interesting story, I remember in my first company, the investor said to me, a VC said to me, we were looking to I think replace the HR leader at the time goes to me, Eddie, we don't need HR. We just need more sales. Because he goes, sales solves all problems. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. HR is always there. Sales masks problems. If you have incredible sales, it masks problems. It doesn't solve problems. I know a lot of investors, a lot of again, like they're focused on the P&L. It's like, no, we don't need that. It's a cost. You just need more sales. None at all. Because you get to a certain point, and I've experienced it, especially in my first company, where you think the culture's great and you're singing everyone's praises and something happens, and then all of a sudden you're having a blame game of everyone else's to blame. Guess what? Sales didn't solve anything. All it did was actually mask the problem. So again, HR is an enabler, very strategic for that reason.
Yeah. And sales is not the leading indicator
No.
to what we're talking about here. No, that's really good. Well, hey, Eddie, before we head over to our lightning round, I'd love a little story time because I always love to hear favorite stories of all that we're talking about, like in action. So can you share a story or two of a client that you've worked with and just the journey of here's where they were, here's where they are? Just give us an example.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started working with this organization early this year, about 100 people. And they sort of hit a point where they were getting, it was $10 million every year for the last 3 years. They couldn't really do anything and they weren't really going anywhere and they weren't very profitable. And basically, wanted to they reached the ceiling, I guess, probably the best way to describe it. So we started to work with them, created the assessment for them, started to measure them. And we've been helping them implement a lot of changes through the course of this year, 2024. They've had changes in leadership, changes in practices, changes in people managers. And because of that, they've seen profit grow, revenue grow, initiatives grow. And what's interesting is that, again, depending on where the organization is at, it starts with the people. And sometimes you need to replace a lot of the people or some of the people to actually see the results. So their example where they start to see profit growth, but revenue hasn't grown yet much because they're really focused on replacing some leadership team and some of the people across the business. But even through the last few months, I started to change and turn a corner and optimistic for next year. So, like when we're dealing with people, especially when they're dispersed, it takes time to replace, find the right people, etc. And they've started to see great success according to the course of this year. The score's gone up, the profits have gone up, and clearly it's a journey that we're going on. But it's been incredible to see them succeed through this lens.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, listeners, get this. All of this starts with what Eddie and his team called the SKOR snapshot, and you can get it free. So I just took it. I'm actually excited. I got my email follow-up with some suggestions, but I'm like, hey, Eddie, I want you to walk through this with me because I'm so excited about it. And I think, his team or partners of SKOR do the same thing with people like you. So yeah, the very first step in all of this is you get to do the SKOR snapshot for free, which helps you to understand some of those, root cause areas, where to prioritize to really guide, how could SKOR help your organization? So I'm so excited about that. That is going to be rolling out today and beyond with our partnership with Gut Plus Science. And I want to report back on, what my data helps our company do because I just took it myself. So more to come with that. But we're going to head over to our lightning round. Eddie, I know you've listened to the show before, so you probably are ready for this little fast, exciting time that we do to end the show. We always start with this question, so hopefully you're prepared for this one. Your favorite book of all time or a favorite recent read? Which book do you want to add to our ever-growing list?
So hard. I've got so many great books, but I'm going to pick one that maybe you don't have rather than one that you do have is Never Split the Difference from Chris Voss. I'm not sure if you've know that one.
Yes, I read that in the past, and I need to do a reread because I remember
So
how
good.
powerful. Yes.
So good. I've used it in all parts of my life, saved millions of dollars in negotiation. You use it in so many different ways. Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss. Definitely one of my all-time favorites. I think I've read it 3 or 4 times.
So good. I just jotted that down for myself to get back on that book because it is so good. Okay, so you ready for this? Guys, I hear that Eddie is a beast mode athlete. So Eddie, tell us more about this.
I'm not sure beast mode, but definitely I attempt to do them. So I do Spartan racing, Nikki. People are familiar with Spartan racing, kind of like Tough Mudder, the sort of obstacle endurance racing where you do races from 4 miles all the way up to 16, 17 mile races. You could do a trifecta each year, which I've done now twice. I've done 13 of them, convinced a bunch of my boys, even my wife, to do one of them. And they're amazing. And they're really tough, but afterwards, they're truly amazing. So I do a couple of them a year.
Well, and if you don't call Spartan races beast mode, I am so curious what you call beast mode. Like, well, how do you define that then?
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. Like I've always been one that if you give me two parts, one easy, one hard, I'll always pick hard, no matter what. I don't know why.
Ooh, which makes me want to know and want to share with everyone the unexpected lesson that you've learned over these 13 Spartan races.
Yeah, great question. Probably the fact that like every race is very hard and some of the obstacles are incredibly difficult and you're going through incredible amount of pain in it, whether it's carrying an 80-pound bucket of rocks up a steep incline and then going steep descent where your toenails are blue and you're just going through enormous pain. And at the time you think you're about to die, like nothing else matters. You're, why the hell am I doing this? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is just incredible pain. Then afterwards you go like, actually, that wasn't so bad. Like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And I think that, experience through those races helps me in life, because when I think that I'm going through a tough time or through a difficult moment, and I think that I can't think of anything else at that time, actually, it's always fine. It's always not a big deal. I always get over it relatively quickly and afterwards going, well, that was easy. So I think if I can get through a physical pain moment, I can get through an emotional pain moment too, if it's in the moment that I think that the world's crumbling. So that's my learning that I've applied in my life.
Well, I'm just going to tee up Edie for way more than culture, leadership, data insights to say anyone that needs mentorship in life, you hear someone, they're like, no big deal. Like, it's not that, after I got through my toes becoming blue, I only realized that wasn't that hard. So I'm sure we have so much to learn from Edie in the whole life area. That's so awesome, Edie. I did not know that about that. Very cool stuff about you and very much appreciate it. So I might be hitting you up for some side mentorship about some extra stuff. But Edie, can we wrap up with the best way for people to reach out to you in all seriousness, for any questions that they might have? What's the best way?
Of course. And just want to say, I love talking about this stuff. I'm happy to talk about, culture and teams and coaching forever with anyone, really. LinkedIn is the best bet. Just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there and always active. Or my email, Edie@culturescore.com, or just go to the website. I'm pretty active and I want to engage. I'm up for a conversation with frankly anyone on the topic.
Yes. And I will challenge you, if this piqued your interest, which I'm pretty sure you're listening to Gut Plus Science and SKOR is so on brand for what we're doing here, go try the SKOR snapshot. And I hope to bring more people on that can share their learnings. And now, gosh, what if you hadn't have done that? How would your life at work be different? How would your team be different? It'll be fun to share those stories in the future. So, Edie, thanks again for joining. I'm so excited to kick off our partnership officially.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, Nikki. It's been great.
Well, Edie Geller, that was so fun. I know, a long time coming. We've been talking about doing an episode for a while, and the perfect timing. Love that SKOR is coming alongside People Forward Network, particularly Gut Plus Science, to help more people hone in on key priorities that really can focus efforts around moving culture forward. Here's my truth you can act on from our conversation today. Number one, there are 3 key components that are the pillars of leading culture forward. Cohesion, which is your core values, shared mission, things like that. Clarity, which is your strategy, team goals, individual roles. And courage, which is, do we have the right environment, the growth mindset to take all this on and, crush it moving forward, if you will. Number 2, focus on root cause versus manifested problems, such as asking data gathering questions that are tied to leading indicators. Such a difference maker. And number 3, take the SKOR snapshot. This thing is awesome. And the team at SKOR have created an opportunity to give you that for free. So why not get a better understanding of your highest priority needs to move your culture forward, especially going into the new year. We're so excited about this partnership. Thanks again, Edie. We'll see you next time. we just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.